All right, let's jump right into it. Today, we're tackling something massive, the Dao De Jing, which you might know is the Taoist Canon.
A big one, for sure.
And to help us make sense of it all, we've got excerpts from uh, scholarly works like this one, the Taoist Canon,
Yeah.
a historical companion to the Dao De Jing.
A fantastic resource.
It really is. And to spice things up, we're going to dive right into some actual texts from within the canon itself.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, we're going to be zigzagging through history, looking at famous texts, exploring different schools of Taoism, the whole shebang.
It's going to be quite the journey.
It is. It's like, we're about to step into this ancient library filled with scrolls and, well, centuries of secrets.
I like that.
But one of the things that jumped out at me is that, unlike, say, the Buddhist canon, the Dao De Jing isn't just a nice, neat collection of religious texts.
You're absolutely right. It's much more diverse than that.
Right. It's got all sorts of things in there.
It does. It even includes works from all sorts of philosophical schools, like from the Warring States period.
Yeah. And I guess that's led to a lot of debate about, like, what even counts as Taoism.
Definitely. The lines can get really blurry.
Yeah. It's almost like trying to define those mystery cults of ancient Greece.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's like a secret society with knowledge passed down in whispers.
Right. And the book actually makes that comparison.
That's a good one. It helps us understand how Taoism, especially early on, was really woven into the fabric of Chinese society. Less of a separate entity and more of a force flowing through all sorts of practices and beliefs.
Which makes you wonder, how do you even begin to collect and categorize something that fluid?
That's the million-dollar question. It's not like they had a big meeting and decided, okay, these texts are in, these are out.
No, definitely not. So how did they get from those scattered whispers, so to speak, to an actual, like, formalized canon? Was there some pivotal moment, some grand council?
It wasn't quite like that. Think of it more as a slow, gradual process.
Okay, a slow burn.
Yeah. We can actually see early attempts at kind of defining Taoism in figures like Zhehong. Yes, he was a scholar in the 4th century.
Okay, so a few centuries after the Warring States period.
Exactly. And his book, Bao Puzi, is really fascinating.
What's so special about it?
Well, it's kind of like he critiques certain practices that were going around, but he still connects them to this bigger idea of Taoism.
So he's acknowledging that Taoism is a thing,
Yes.
but also that some people are maybe getting it wrong.
Yeah, like he's trying to draw a circle around it, but the edges are still a bit fuzzy.
That's so interesting. But we're talking about a time when, books were handwritten scrolls, knowledge was carefully guarded.
Right. Very secretive.
Wasn't early Taoism especially shrouded in secrecy?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just imagine being Zhehong, studying under his master, Zheng Yin.
Okay.
And to receive certain texts, he had to swear this oath of secrecy. They were transmitted every 40 years.
Every 40 years. That's longer than some people's careers.
I know, right? It shows you how seriously they took this stuff.
Wow. So how did they go from these secret teachings, passed down in whispers, to a structured canon? I noticed in the outline it mentions something about 3 caverns.
Ah, yes, the 3 caverns. That was the early organizational system they used for the Dao De Jing.
Okay, but just 3 caverns. That seems a bit broad, right?
Well, imagine trying to navigate a giant library, and all you have are these 3 caverns as your guide.
Like 3 giant sections.
Yeah, it's like a library with only 3 Dewey Decimal categories.
Not very helpful.
No, not really. It was a figure named Lu Shujing in the 5th century who really pushed for this 3 caverns system.
And what did those caverns represent?
Each one represented a different level of teaching and kind of a hierarchy within the Taoist clergy.
Oh, interesting. So it wasn't just about the texts themselves, but also about the people who were transmitting them.
Exactly.
But then the outline also mentions 7 divisions and even 36 subdivisions. It's like they went overboard with the categories.
Yes. You could say that. They did love to categorize things, and sometimes it did get a bit, confusing, especially in the Ming Dynasty version of the canon.
Ah, yes, the Ming Dynasty, always known for their meticulous organization.
That's right. But all of that is just about how they organized the library, so to speak.
Okay.
Now, what about the books themselves?
Right, let's talk about the books. I'm guessing there are some familiar titles in there.
Oh, of course. You can't talk about the Dao Zong without mentioning the Laozi, also known as the Dao De Jing.
The classic.
Mm-hmm.
The one everyone knows, or at least has heard of.
Exactly. But of course, there are some debates about, its authorship, when it was actually written.
Right. There's always some mystery surrounding these ancient texts.
Always. But what's particularly fascinating are the Mawangdui manuscripts.
Okay, tell me about those.
They actually predate other versions of the Laozi.
Really?
Yeah, so they give us this incredible glimpse into its possible original form.
That's amazing. It's
Yeah.
like finding the rough draft of a famous novel.
I know, right?
And potentially even a different ending.
Potentially. It really makes you wonder about how the text evolved over time.
That's fascinating. But here's where things get even more intriguing. Why are there scrolls in the canon that aren't even considered Taoist?
Good question.
Like the outline mentions the Mozi and the Giguzi. What are those doing in there?
Well, it seems the compilers of the Dao De Jing were interested in preserving texts they considered valuable, even if they weren't strictly Taoist by later definitions.
So they weren't being, like, exclusive?
No, not at all. They were curators of wisdom in a broader sense.
I like that. They were thinking outside the box.
They were. Take the Ulisi, for example.
Okay, Ulysses?
That text might be linked to early Han Dynasty Taoism, and it provides all sorts of interesting insights into, like, the political and social landscape of the time.
That's like a window into a lost world.
Exactly. It's a valuable historical source.
So they're not just preserving religious teachings, they're preserving history as well.
That's right.
Wow. Okay, so what about Bao Puzi? We mentioned that one earlier. Ge Hong, the guy who was trying to define Taoism but also really into alchemy?
Ah, yes, Bao Puzi. Well, even with his focus on alchemy, it's still an essential text for understanding early Taoism.
It shows how all these different ideas were swirling around at the time.
Yes. Philosophy, alchemy, spiritual practices, it's all there.
But what about the different schools of Taoism that developed, like, later on? The outline mentions heavenly masters, Shangqing, and Lingbai.
Right. Those are three major branches represented in the Dao De Jing, each with its own unique flavor, I guess you could say.
Flavor. I like that.
For example, with Heavenly Masters Taoism, we have the Chianger commentary on the Laozi.
Okay.
But there's debate about whether it was actually written by the founder, Zheng Daoling, or his grandson, Zhang Lu.
More mysteries. I'm sensing a theme here.
There are always more mysteries. And then there's the Taiping Jing.
Taiping Jing. What's that one about?
Well, it's considered a key text for early Heavenly Masters Taoism.
Okay.
But here's the catch, it was actually lost.
What? How do you lose a whole text?
Well, it disappeared from the official record during the Ming Dynasty.
So they deliberately removed it.
It seems that way.
Wow. That makes you wonder what secrets it might have held.
Right. It's like a lost chapter of history.
Fascinating. Okay, so Heavenly Masters is full of intrigue. What about Shangqing Taoism? What kind of texts do they have?
A central text for them is the Da Dong Zhenjing.
Okay.
It's considered to contain, like, their core teachings.
Got it.
But the full version we have today is actually from later periods.
So where's the original? Did they lose that one too?
Well, not exactly. Fragments of the original have actually been found among the Dunhuang manuscripts.
The Dunhuang manuscripts, those are like a treasure trove of ancient texts.
They are. And finding those fragments is like piecing together a puzzle from centuries ago.
Amazing. Okay, so we've got Heavenly Masters with their lost scriptures and Shangqing with their rediscovered fragments. What about Lingbao? What makes them unique?
Lingbao is interesting because it actually shows a strong influence from Buddhism.
Wait, Buddhist elements in a Taoist text? That's unexpected.
I know. It was a time of incredible cultural exchange, and it seems the Lingbao texts integrated certain Buddhist ideas.
So they were borrowing and adapting, kind of like a remix.
Yeah, you could say that.
What kind of text did they come up with?
One of their key scriptures is the Shenzhou Jing.
Okay.
And this one will get your attention. It predicts an apocalypse.
Apocalypse. Okay, now we're talking. We're going to dive into that one later.
Definitely.
But, you know, all these scriptures and teachings, it's easy to forget that the Dao Zhang also includes commentaries on those texts.
Right. It's not just the original words, but also how people interpreted them over time.
It's like getting different perspectives on the same story.
Exactly. And we can see this really clearly with commentaries on the Laozi from different periods.
Each one offering a unique interpretation.
Right. Reflecting the thought of their time.
So are there any really, like, standout commentaries that we should know about? Any emperors weighing in on the Laozi?
Actually, yes. Emperor Xuanzang of the Tang Dynasty wrote his own commentary.
Wow. An emperor. That's quite the endorsement.
It is. It shows you how seriously they took these texts.
Okay. Any other notable commentaries?
There's one called the Zui Kantang Qi, which has a very complex history.
Yeah.
And it demonstrates how different strands of thought, like even Confucian and Buddhist ideas, were woven into Taoist interpretations.
So it's not just a Taoist canon, it's a reflection of Chinese intellectual history in general.
That's a great way to put it. It's a tapestry of ideas.
And that's what makes it so fascinating. It's like a window into the evolution of thought itself.
I agree. It really is. But, with all these commentaries and philosophical debates, it's easy to forget that the Dao De Jing also contains texts that are, like, incredibly practical.
Practical, like how-to manuals.
Kind of. They focus on things like techniques for achieving immortality.
Ooh, immortality.
Yeah.
That's always a popular topic.
It is. Or communicating with spirits.
Spirits. Now we're talking. This is getting good.
Right. So one thing you see a lot of in the Dao De Jing, especially those early Heavenly Masters texts, are talismans.
Talismans.
Yeah. And they weren't just like pretty decorations. They were believed to hold real power.
Like a magical charm.
Exactly. Often connected to specific deities or cosmic forces.
Like those 5 sacred mountains we saw mentioned.
Right. Like, for example, the Wuyu Zengxing Zulin tells the story of how the 5 sacred mountains talisman was revealed.
And how to use it.
Yeah. It describes the rituals for using it, for protection and spiritual advancement.
It's like channeling the energy of those mountains.
Exactly. Harnessing their power.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But what about those immortality practices? What kind of secrets did they uncover?
Well, they explored a whole range of techniques, from special diets and breathing exercises
Okay, the classics.
to alchemical formulas.
Ooh, alchemy. Always a bit mysterious.
It is.
Yeah.
All aimed at extending life and achieving a state of transcendence.
Transcendence.
Nice.
Sounds lofty.
It does. One text that's particularly interesting is the Taishang Kizian Dinglu Jisu Zhenju Yuan.
Okay, that's a mouthful. What does that even mean?
It's a collection of sacred writs.
Grits.
Yeah, like instructions for different levels of initiation.
It's like a step-by-step guide to immortality.
You could say that. It even mentions Shi Wangmu, the Queen Mother of the West.
Of course. The Queen Mother. She's always popping up in these stories.
She is, and she's often associated with immortality and paradise.
Right, she's got that whole mystical vibe.
Exactly. So it seems like there was this structured path for spiritual advancement, and these writs were like keys to unlock each stage.
I like that analogy. But what about communicating with spirits? Was that just for the elite, or could anyone give it a try?
Well, there are texts that detail rituals for interacting with the spirit world.
Okay, spirit world.
And it wasn't just about, like, summoning ghosts or anything spooky.
Okay, good to know.
Often it had benevolent purposes,
Like what?
like seeking protection or guidance.
Oh, interesting. So more like asking for advice from the spirits.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Are there any specific texts that deal with that?
One example is the Dongshen Badi Yuanbian Jing,
Okay.
which focuses on divination.
Divination. So like predicting the future.
Yeah. Or understanding those hidden patterns in the universe.
Trying to decode the cosmos.
Exactly.
That's ambitious. But I've also heard about, a darker side to spirit communication, like exorcisms dealing with demonic forces.
Oh, right. Yeah, there were definitely texts that address those aspects as well.
Like what?
For example, the Taishang Dongshen Dongyuan Shen Su Zibing Kuzhang outlines methods for healing through spiritual means.
So they saw illness as potentially having a spiritual cause.
Yeah, like an imbalance or
And
something.
they would use these techniques to restore harmony.
Right.
That makes sense. But how does all of this connect back to those apocalyptic predictions we were talking about earlier?
Oh, right. The apocalypse.
Yeah, the Shinzu Jing and all that.
Right. Well, it's interesting how that text really paints this vivid picture of a world on the brink of disaster.
Like full-on doom and gloom.
Pretty much. Filled with demons, and it even predicts a great flood.
A flood, like Noah's Ark style.
Well, not exactly, but it does emphasize this need for purification
Okay.
and spiritual renewal in the face of these calamities.
Go like a wake-up call.
Yeah, you could say that. And it even mentions a savior figure.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Li Hong, who will appear after the apocalypse to establish a new era of peace.
So even in the midst of all the chaos, there's this glimmer of hope.
Exactly.
Classic apocalyptic narrative. But how are people supposed to prepare for all of this? Did the text offer any practical advice?
It did. It stressed the importance of following Taoist practices,
Like what?
like reciting specific scriptures and spreading the teachings to others.
So it wasn't just about passively waiting for the end.
No, it was about actively working towards a better future.
Okay, I like that. But what about those people who weren't buying into all this apocalyptic talk? I mean, there must have been skeptics, right?
Oh, definitely. The Dongsuan Lingbao Fexian Miaojing actually acknowledges that a lot of people didn't believe in these teachings.
So they were aware of the doubters.
They were, especially when faced with a world that seemed, superficial and fleeting.
The pleasures of the material world.
Right. And the text kind of suggests that engaging with these teachings can lead to a deeper understanding of reality.
Like a more profound truth.
Exactly. And a path to true liberation.
So it's about seeing beyond the surface.
Yeah.
But, with all this talk about scriptures and teachings, it makes you realize just how important the act of transmission was.
Absolutely.
Passing down these texts, these practices, was essential.
It was. It was like the lifeblood of the tradition.
Keeping it alive, helping it to evolve.
Exactly. And we even see this reflected in the Taiking Wushiba Yuanwen.
Okay, another long one. Break it down for me.
Well, it basically lists 58 vows.
58. They were serious about this.
They were. And these vows emphasize ethical conduct, commitment to the Tao, and the importance of passing these teachings on to future generations.
It's like a sacred trust.
You could say that.
Yeah.
But what did that transmission actually look like? Was it a formal ceremony or more of a casual mentorship? It seems like there were different approaches.
Yeah, so a mix of both.
Yeah, we see examples of formal rituals in texts like the Dongshuan Lingbo or Shisi Sheng Tujing,
Okay.
which involved talismans, specific scriptures, and oaths of allegiance.
So it's like a formal initiation.
Exactly.
But what about those more informal settings, like the master-student relationship?
That's where texts like the Wushang Biao come in.
Wushang Biao.
Yeah. This one's fascinating. It's a whole compendium of Taoist knowledge compiled in the late 6th century.
So like a Taoist encyclopedia?
Kind of. It includes excerpts from earlier texts, commentaries, and instructions on various practices.
It's like a treasure chest of wisdom.
It is. Imagine a master guiding their student through this text, selecting specific passages, offering interpretations.
So it wasn't just about handing over a book, it was about guiding the student through it.
Right. It was about tailoring the teachings to the individual's needs.
A personalized approach.
Exactly.
I like that. But with all these different texts and approaches, how did they make sure the teachings stayed true to their origins? Was there like a strict set of rules, or was there room for individual interpretation?
That's a great question. And it seems like there was this delicate balance between upholding core principles and allowing for adaptation and innovation.
So not too rigid, not too loose.
Right. And the Daozang itself reflects that with its mix of ancient texts, later commentaries, and even some non-Taoist works.
So it's not a static tradition, it's constantly evolving.
It is, responding to new ideas and challenges.
But with all this talk about the transmission of teachings, it really highlights the importance of the teacher.
Absolutely.
That master-student relationship seems so central to the whole thing.
It is, and the Daozang offers some glimpses into those relationships and the qualities they valued in a teacher.
What kind of qualities?
Well, for example, in the Dongsuan Lingbao Shangxi Zhuhu Shenming Jing, we actually get to kind of eavesdrop on a conversation between a master and his disciples.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the master is imparting teachings and instructions on spiritual practice.
Okay.
And he emphasizes the importance of personal guidance, that connection between teacher and student.
Like a spiritual apprenticeship.
Exactly.
But with all these texts and practices focused on individual transformation, I'm curious about the role of community in Taoism.
That's a good point. It wasn't all solitary hermits meditating in caves.
Right. There had to be some communal aspects as well.
There were. Texts like the Dongshuan Lingbao Juhui Dingzi Tongwei Jing actually outline rules for communal rituals.
Okay.
And they stress the importance of supporting fellow practitioners.
So it's not just about you and the Tao, it's about the whole community.
Yeah. The idea of collective spiritual advancement.
I like that. But with all these rules and rituals, I'm starting to get a sense of like the organizational structure of Taoism.
Right. Like, was it a formal hierarchy or more decentralized?
Yeah. Did they have like membership cards and different levels of initiation?
Well, not membership cards exactly, but as we discussed earlier, the development of the canon itself kind of reflects the emergence of a more hierarchical structure, especially with Lu Jing's 3 cavern system.
Right. But did that hierarchy extend beyond the organization of texts?
That's a good question.
Did people actually walk around with titles like Cavern Master or something?
Well, not cavern master exactly, but there were definitely different ranks and positions within the community.
Okay, so there is some structure.
There was. Texts like the Dong Suan Lingbao Dao Shisho Sandong Jingji Falu actually outline rules for different levels of ordination.
So like different ranks within the priesthood.
Yeah, and the responsibilities that came with each rank.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But did this hierarchy create a sense of like separation between those in positions of power and the everyday practitioners?
That's hard to say for sure.
Right. It's all speculation at this point.
But there are texts that emphasize the importance of humility,
Okay.
ethical conduct, and service to the community, regardless of one's rank.
So it's not just about power, it's about using your position to help others.
Exactly.
I like that. But with all this focus on spiritual development and, otherworldly goals, I'm curious about how Taoism viewed the material world.
Oh, that's a great question.
Was it something to be rejected, or was there a way to integrate the spiritual and the mundane?
I think one text that speaks to that really well is the Taiping Jing.
Right. The one that mysteriously vanished from the Ming Dynasty canon.
The one and only. It's a complex text with lots of different interpretations, but it seems to emphasize the importance of social harmony,
Okay.
ethical governance, and living in accordance with the Tao, even in everyday life.
So it's not about escaping the world, but finding a way to live harmoniously within it.
Exactly. It's a more grounded perspective, I guess you could say.
I like that. But didn't the Taiping Jing also have a connection to those millenarian beliefs we were talking about earlier?
It did, and that's where things get really interesting. It presents this vision of a utopian society.
Utopia.
Yeah, free from suffering and injustice.
Sounds pretty ideal.
Right. And this really resonated with people who were seeking, social and spiritual renewal.
So it's appealing to both those seeking individual transformation and those hoping for a better world.
Exactly. It's a powerful combination.
But how did this utopian vision play out in practice? Were there actual attempts to create these ideal communities?
There were. During the Han Dynasty, there were actually rebellions inspired by the Taiping Jing.
Rebellions.
Yeah. They wanted to overthrow the government, which they saw as corrupt, and create a new era of peace and prosperity. They did. They wanted to overthrow the government, which they saw as corrupt, and create a new era of peace and prosperity.
So they were putting those utopian ideals into action.
Exactly. It wasn't just a philosophical exercise.
Did these attempts at building a better world, did they actually succeed?
Well, not in the long run.
Oh,
During the Han Dynasty, there were rebellions inspired by the Taiping Jing,
okay.
aiming to, overthrow the government, but they were ultimately suppressed.
So they faced some pushback.
They did?
It's a reminder that even the most inspiring ideas, can face resistance when you try to put them into practice.
That's true.
But their efforts really show how potent those beliefs were, how they could mobilize people to take action.
Absolutely. They weren't just sitting around talking about it.
No, they were trying to make a real difference.
They were.
It seems like they saw Taoism not just as a personal spiritual path,
Yeah.
but as a way to, transform society.
I think that's a really important point. It challenged the idea that spiritual seeking was solely an individual pursuit.
It was about creating a world where those ideals could flourish.
Exactly.
Even though those rebellions, didn't achieve their immediate goals, did those millenarian beliefs just fade away?
Not at all. They evolved, often blending with popular religion and folk practices.
So they went underground, in a way.
Yeah, you could say that. And we see this in later texts, like the Shenzhou Jing, which we talked about earlier.
Right, with its apocalyptic predictions.
Exactly. But it's framed within a different context, reflecting those evolving beliefs.
So it's like those ideas were woven into the fabric of Chinese culture, resurfacing in different forms over time.
Right. It speaks to the enduring power of those beliefs.
It really does. With all these scriptures, rituals, apocalyptic prophecies, it really highlights how diverse and, multifaceted Taoism is.
It absolutely does. There's no one right way to understand it.
And the Daozang itself is a testament to that, right?
It is. It's this incredible collection of voices from different periods, different schools, offering different perspectives.
It's like a giant conversation that's been going on for centuries.
A conversation that's still going on today.
Exactly. And I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of what the Daozang has to offer.
We have. There's so much more to explore.
I'm curious what else is hiding within this ancient library. What other surprises await?
Well, one thing that I find particularly intriguing is the inclusion of commentaries on the Laozi from figures outside of the Taoist tradition.
Oh, really? Like what?
There's actually a commentary by Zhu Xi included in the Dao Zeng,
Wait, Zhu Xi, the famous Confucian scholar.
the one and only.
Wow, that's unexpected. I wonder what his take on the Laozi was.
That's a great question to ponder. It really highlights how interconnected Chinese thought was, how these different schools of thought weren't isolated but in constant dialogue.
Challenging and enriching each other.
Exactly.
It's a reminder that knowledge isn't confined to neat boxes. It's fluid, evolving.
Always open to new perspectives.
I think that's what our deep dive into the Dao Zeng has really shown us.
It has. We've journeyed through centuries, explored all sorts of texts and practices, encountered a world of ideas far more complex than we might have imagined.
And that's the beauty of it.
It is. It's this constant process of discovery.
So to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining me on this journey.
It's been a pleasure. Until next time.